Make sure you save your file and your class file next to each other for it to work. This is one of the important things. If your class file is somewhere else, it will not work. This is just me being pedantic, making a 64 by 64 circle. Then I do this. I make sure I export it for ActionScript. So advanced ActionScript, export, click the little pen thing, and then save this file straight away right next to where your project file is. So that should be, for me, that was C drive project, and that's where the FLA is. So as long as they're next to each other, this works, right? In the blob code, I put a trace statement in here to basically say trace a blob was made. So this is what the constructor is. Whenever I have a blob and that blob is attached to a class file, when those two things run, the blob will instantiate, and that's called construct. And therefore the code that's in the construction will actually appear. So in this case, if I have nothing, nothing appears. If I have a blob and I run it, I have a blob was made up in the output thing up the top there. So if I make two blobs, I'm going to have two messages saying a blob was made because two blobs were made. But there's no code in the actual FLA. All of the code is in the Blob AS file, which is this external file that we've made to define what a blob is or how it should behave. You can edit the class directly this way. So you right click on it in the library and go to edit class. It brings up your text file here. And then you can add and edit stuff internally. So what we're working towards is making it have some health. So we add a new variable, call it health. We make it equal to 100 initially. And that allows your blob to have, hit points if you want. And lots of thinking. Then we have another one here where we're going to have to take stuff away from the health. So if we click the blob, then we take health away from the blob. So this is all contained within the blob. So the blob is responsible for itself. So the blob says, if someone clicks me, I have to lose some health. You could make it die instantly. Dying instantly is just making all the health go to 0 straight away. Here what we're saying is, look, every time I'm clicked, minus from the health, which is going to take 1 off. And then tell us what your health is. Then we also need to add an event handler into the constructor. So when the blob is created, it has an event handler that manages that. Now I've got an issue here. The issue was I thought with that, but it wasn't. Because I've got the function attribute here. So
unit as well. Is that right?
Yeah. No, because it's meant to be a uint.
Oh, uint. Okay.
So it's an unsigned integer. I forgot the var in front of health. And then I forgot L in my health there. There you go. See? So I'm human. So every time I click it now, the health goes down by 1, so it goes from 99 to that, but each blob has their own health. Because the blobs themselves start each off with 100, so whichever one I click on, that one is the one that loses the health. Okay. Next, what I want to do is I want to actually change the scale of it. So if I click it, I want the health to be used to scale the blob down. So every time I click it, the blob should get a little bit smaller. So if I click it, it's getting smaller slightly so. It's too slow, so I change it from minus to minus equals 5, so it goes down by increments of 5. So now if I click it, it's getting smaller until it gets that little dot, and I can't even click it. There it is. So that's health is 0, gone, right? And then we have some thinking time. Right. So if health is less than 5, then get rid of this thing. So I wanted to free up the memory. Because even though the blob's now at 0, it's still taking up memory because it's still there, but at 0. At 0 size, it's still taking up RAM. So I have to do a remove child called on it. And then after it does it, it removes the blob. But if I just do that, remove child, it has an error, which is that error, that tells you, sorry, but you can't remove something. You can't remove yourself from the display. You have to tell someone who still exists in the display to remove you. So we add this little command here saying movie clip, open parentheses, put parent in, close parentheses, dot, and then it works. So it basically goes up a level into the parent, so the stage, and the stage then deletes the dot when we get to the small one. And then it says blob was eliminated, and then we can do that for the other one as well. So that's one way you can do it, right? That's an example of what you could do with scaling it. Now, all of you have different ideas for your blob games, which is fine, so don't stress about any of this stuff. I'm just going to take this back to health being 10, and I'm going to do minus minus. So every single time I click, it should go down by 1. And then this says if the health is less than 1, then it's game over. Done. Blob eliminated. Blob eliminated. So there's no scaling anymore. We've taken the scaling out. So blob has health points. Every single time we click, loses some health. Now what? Right, now I'm making them run away from me. There you go. Yeah, so every single time I click it, I also want it to move slightly. So I'm going to get it to move plus 10 pixels every single time I click it. So it's going to run away towards the bottom right-hand corner. So that's what you do. You say this dot x, this dot y, because the blob has an x and y coordinate. Each one of them has their own independent x and y. So in this case, they're moving around that way. Now I'm making them jump by 32, which is half the size of the blob, because the blob is 64. Again, why I like to kind of give them numbers. So then I do a math random. So this gives me a random number between 0 and 1, right? So I'm saying if it's more than 0.5, so 50% of the time, go this way, while the other 50% of the time go the other way. Click the magic button to the format, so I can be lazy. And run that. So now it'll go that way, and it'll go, oh no it doesn't because I didn't save it. There you go, I'm a noob. If you have a little asterisk next to your blob.as, that means you haven't saved the file, which means the changes haven't been implemented. So you have to make sure you save, otherwise you look like a noob like me, which is not good. So then I go 32 is not enough, I'm going to make it move its whole distance. So this is 64, so it's going to jump by 64 pixels. It's going to jump by a whole the whole size of it, this way and that way. Now I've got a problem. It goes off the screen, right? So if it goes off the screen, I've got a bit of a problem. What do I do now? How do I bind it to the screen size? Exactly. So now we have to go and do another if statement. So if after the move, so after I move it, if after the move you are outside, so you're up above or on the left, then I want to reposition you to the bottom or the right hand side. So if you move out onto the left and there's no more left, then go and appear on the right hand side. If you move up to the top and there's no more top, go and reappear at the bottom. So this way what we're doing is we're basically saying, okay, your x should be 550, which is the width of my file, minus 64, which is the circle width. Otherwise it'll appear outside anyway. We do that for the x and the y. And then we test it. And it goes down, so we can't really test it. So it's really useless. It goes down. And I didn't put the code in for what happens when it goes down. I only put the code for when it goes up. And then I killed it before I got to the top. I had to play it again. I know. And this one doesn't want to perform either. But this one, come on. I give up. Do I give up? I think I give up. Anyway. So then we add just the other stuff. So copy, paste. Do the same thing, but this time what we want to do is make sure that if it's greater than the actual width, so this is the 550 and 400. So if it's greater than that, that means it's outside, and then we need to reposition it back to 0. But then we want to add 64 to it, so rather than 0 plus 64, we just leave it at 64. So if it goes off the screen there, it should appear there, but again, I didn't save it. See the asterisk?
We do.
Yeah. So then we try it again. This time it decides to go which way? Down. There you go. Ah, and it appears up the top. And that one reappears at the bottom. And for some reason, that's not good enough. So I need to change something. I can't remember what.
What is that? This statement?
This refers to itself. So if you wanted to change the x and the y of itself, you need to save this so it stays within the object that you're inside of.
Okay.
So I think I had those numbers wrong. There you go.
That only work because you coding the blob itself?
Because I'm defining the blob, that's why the this statement works, because it's a definition of the blob itself.
But if you weren't coding just the blob itself,
Then it wouldn't work, no. Because then you'd have to say blob 1, blob 2, blob 3. But if we're inside the blob, we get to say this, which is quite magical in that sense. So yeah, so this one's the randomly move the ball.
Can you randomly do the 64 by 64?
Yeah,
Does
you
it
can.
do random as well?
Yeah, definitely. The actual position where they need to, and they can also spawn. You can use the spawn locations as well, so you can make it go to different positions. So this repositions it if it goes off the screen, and this one here removes it if it's out of health. But wait, there's more. I can't remember what. Oh, I know what. Yeah, no. Yeah, so then you're done. You kind of have a blob game, and it's awesome, and it works, and it does the job, which is great. Any extra blobs you put in, that's where they start. There's no actual blob counter. There's no one keeping track of them, which is why there's no end game. So there's no such thing as, finishing the game because there's no one counting the game. But if the blobs were to, upon creation, tell someone about their existence, then that person could track them, and that would be a list. And so if you've had a list that way, that would work. Alright, so what we do now is we do a mouse over and a mouse out so that the blob gets a little bit bigger and then back to being normal size when you move the mouse out. This just gives people a little bit of an indicator that these blobs are clickable. So we just copy and paste a lot of this stuff so I don't have to type it again. And what we do then is just basically scale it up and down. So like we were doing before with the health, when we were scaling it down as the health was going down, now we're going to specifically get the scale to go up to 110%. The way we do that is to say scale x equals 1.1 and then scale y equals 1.1. Now I can't actually see it working because I didn't get the function name changed, so I got to change that to over. That's what I told it I'd call it, and then I need one for out. That one's for out, and that goes back to 1. So rather than scale 1.1, these would revert back to being 1 if I wake up. No. That's my next mistake. I didn't change it to 1. There you go. So this will be out, and then I'll save it, I'll test it, and nothing will happen because I didn't change the other one to 1. There we go. That's better. Jeez.
Watching yourself.
I know. It's like, what are you doing?
Stream programming.
It could be handy in a way to teach yourself, eh?
Oh, I always laugh. I always laugh
When you
looking.
go wrong.
Yeah, I always laugh looking at my tutorials, stuff I did. It's just like, Now this thing here I'm adding is a remove event listener. This isn't necessary because when you kill an object, eventually the things like event listeners that were attached to it will also get killed. But it's nice. It's a nice habit to get into because then when you remove those listeners first, they get freed up from the memory instantly. Especially good for bullets. So if you've got a game when there's enemies shooting and you're shooting and you've got 100 or 200 bullets, it's nice to remove those event listeners before you destroy the object because you don't know how long it'll take before it clears it out on its own. It could take up to 2 or 3 minutes before it clears them out without your intervention. So I added a function called kill, which will remove all the event listeners for click, over, and out. And then, and I fix this up as well, so this is going to be out. So then anytime I roll over, they get big. And I'm not happy how they get big because they get big from the top left-hand corner down to the bottom right. I want them to get big from the center. So I have to go back in here and I have to reposition the circle to the stage. I need to center it. So when I center it, now it'll be getting big from the actual center of the ball rather than from the top corner like it was before. So, and again, you can delete these, and if you drag it out, it'll be correct because you've set that up in the main file. So all of these guys will be, repositioning themselves correctly. So now we open that up, we can roll over them, and they get big, and if we click them, they'll move around and run away from us. If you wanted to get fancy, you could add a text box into this, and it could have a number on it, and that number could reflect its health. So every time you click it, the 9 would change to an 8, to a 7, to a 6, and it would give you more feedback about what's going on. But this is kind of where I finished up with the video. So if anything, it shows you just another way or a different approach on how you can do your blob game. With intelligent objects as opposed to having procedural code, which is what we looked at previously. Both of them work, both of them are fine, but you have to pick the way that seems to work better for you. And classes get complicated because you have to have ways of classes talking to one another. However, they're much more powerful because all the code that's responsible for an object is within that object. And so there's less debugging necessary when an error happens. Blueprinting, exactly. It's a big thing. So I highly recommend you give this a go. Just basically play around with it.